If you're interested in automotive racing and you really want to get into dirt track racing, this is a guide for you. Today we're going to go over some of the basics of taking apart a car, getting it prepped, ready for being a race car. This particular car is a 2003 Chevy Cavalier. And some things you want to look for when you're looking for a car is rust, if you live in a rust belt state. Mainly the subframe. This car had significant issues. We dealt with some of it, and some of it I just ran with. In particular, with Cavaliers and Sunfires, the K-frame, it's a cradle in the front of the vehicle, that often rots out. The good news is that you can buy a brand new K-frame off of eBay for $300. The other troublesome spot is the back subframe, back where the shackles for the shocks are. So you want to really check out a car very closely. If you see any significant rust, you may want to shy away from that.
This just pulls out. We'll want to remove the tail lamps, leave the wiring for now. We'll get inside and we'll start removing seats. Bear in mind, once we remove the seats, you'll have to sit on a bucket or on the floor to move it. And then once we get the interior tore out, we can either pull the glass out or we can get the dash out. And we'll loop the cooling system so that we don't have to have a heater core.
Basically what you want to do at this point is just strip all the exterior plastic, the lights need to come out, all of the things that are kind of external pieces that don't really need to be on the car. You want to just rip out like weather strip and everything that makes it car-like at this point. It's going to have to go. And you can see that we're using a lot of power tools here, but you don't have to. You can actually use a 10 millimeter for a lot of things on a Cavalier, on a ratchet. But having some power tools definitely speeds up the process. You can see that we're basically just taking all the exterior off that's just plastic. The other tool you want to get a hold of is a trim removal tool. You use it just about everywhere. You've got clips, Christmas trees, those kinds of things. But getting one of those is kind of secondary. You could use some cut-offs, but trim tool definitely helps. Do it right off the bat.
All right, we got to take the seats out because we're not going to be using anything that you see in here. Anything that's black, plastic, carpet, fabric, headliner, all this stuff, that's got to all come out of there. If the car has an issue and it catches on fire, we don't want any fuel for it. So we take this out. We don't need it. It weighs the car down. The lighter we get it inside, the better we are. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the seat so we can climb around in here, because we got to take out a lot of stuff. It's big and these seats are just going to be in the way. So here we go. We're going to start trying to remove them. They're probably not going to come out easy because they are fine threaded and they're rusty. So far so good on this one. Surprisingly, they're coming out easy. There's probably going to be a harness on it. Some vehicles will have heated seats. They'll have multiple harnesses. Like I said, whenever you're doing these cars, you don't want to have the key on. And if you're really unsure, disconnect the battery. That'd be the safest thing to do. But I'm pretty confident we're going to be okay doing this. Typically, I'd use air tools to do this, but I want to illustrate you don't need air tools to do this. It'd make it faster, but you don't have to. Okay. Typically, they're only held on by 4 nuts. Coming out.
Oh, this will work out.
Okay, we're going to take out some trim now. Wow, oh! These come out just like the cop cars do. Okay, put that over in the pile there, young one. And don't fall. First piece of plastic. There you go.
Ah.
All right, so there's that. I don't think I'm gonna be able to get this out of there quite yet. Let's go for an A post. Oh, hey, there you go.
God, those look giant spider web right there.
Oh yeah. And all these little clips are gonna come out.
You gotta put that eventually in the trailer. So.
You know what? I think this needs to come out too. What's in here?
Good stuff.
Hairpin. Oh, good. Your park brake works. That's a blessing. Back seat's coming out. There's a tether underneath here I'm trying to get to. It releases it. There we go. Back seat coming out. All right, you see this? This is more than likely fuel pump wiring. We don't want to mess with that.
Because it's orange.
Yeah, if you're working on a hybrid, which I hope you aren't, if you're doing this, stay away from orange. It's high voltage. We're just gonna leave that there. As soon as he gets that seat out of there, I want to get this seat belt anchor out of here. Woo. And I'll need the gray toolbox. So let me go get the gray toolbox.
Gimme.
So rusty.
Yeah, it's crusty. All right. That one's coming out. Ugh.
Okay, so I'm gonna remove this. It's like a T50 Torx. So I'm gonna like try to remove it. Oh, wow, this one's amazingly loose. I'd really depend upon that one. Sometimes I have to torch these out of here. All right, now that that's out of my way, there's another one. This has to come out of here. It's going to be in the way of everything we're doing. We don't need it because we're putting in a 5-point harness to the driver. Now some of you might be thinking, well, what about the passenger? Well, we don't do passengers on this style of car class. It's just driver only. And if I encounter wiring harnesses, I don't mess with them right yet. This is a big piece. Oh, need to get that out of there. Is that a Phillips? I can't see it. Yes. Now let's see if it'll come out of there. Oh, you flip down that seat, the little black tether Sean escape hatch pull here.
What's the other side look like? Like in between it? Oh, that's some.
Thanks, sir.
All this foam, get rid of it. We don't want it. Any of the sound deadening stuff, this is sound deadening. We don't want that either. Any of the glues that are on it, we don't want that either. That can go bye-bye. Hey, more orange wiring. Then there's a weight right here I can see outside. We don't want that.
I'm gonna
remove this little thingy here. It's unnecessary. Ow! Some of the bolts you'll encounter have a coating on it. It's called Loctite. It keeps them from backing out. This is a good example of Loctite. That will fight you all the way out. You can assist in getting it off of there by putting a little heat on it if you can. Just be careful that you don't light anything on fire, because there's a lot of stuff that can light on fire in here still yet.
Want me?
Oh, I got it. You can get into this with just hand tools. People that are just first starting out, I mean, you got a lot of money wrapped up in probably buying your first car, if you're on a budget. Thank you. All right. Okay, we got another seat coming out. All right. My lovely assistant here is going to take them out.
Is it loose? Well, try and spin it. There you go.
Oh.
Throw it. Just throw it on.
As you can see here, my brother's cutting the carpet, interior carpet, off of the front end there, around the hump, the shifter knob, the emergency brake, all that just kind of comes off as one piece. Now my son here, he's trying to roll up his side, and sometimes you'll find things are still a little fastened or glued in there, but you still want to be careful because there is some wiring underneath this, and the airbag control module is actually on the passenger side. So as he pulls this up, there will be some wiring and the control for the airbags underneath it. Obviously, if the car still has its battery in and he's still connected, you don't necessarily want to bang on that or mess with it. So, you know, disconnect your battery if you're not sure. But once he rolls it up, there'll be some wiring underneath there, and we'll disable that on the car, obviously, as well.
This control module here.
Yeah.
Okay, this is for your airbag control. We don't want to mess with that. What we want to do is disconnect it. It's got a safety latch on it. When you're doing this, I'm not doing it right. All right, so now it's disabled. That's not working. That worked. So now you can see that little clip. If the sock would catch the edge of that, it would have pulled that off of there. And then the handle will just slide right off. This clip fits into a groove on the window crank. Not on that side. comes that out. The rest of this has to be drilled out. These rivets in order to get the window mechanism out of here.
One of them that I moved earlier.
Yeah. One disconnected battery later. There's a few bolts that run along the back side of this bar that runs under the dash. I'm going to do those, but then once the bar is loose, you're going to have to still cut the bar around the column so that you can slip it off. It's also in the way of the fabrication of the cage. There is a bar in the cage itself that runs along the same path.
Looping the inlet and outlet of the heater core, and I'm trying to get the heater core and heater box assembly out. Just in the process here, removing the last coolant line here.
You broke it!
Alright.
If you could just smash that like button and subscribe to the channel, you'll get more content from Rex to Race Cars. So the one thing I would suggest if you're taking out glass in these cars is that you put a hole in the corner. Don't make the redneck glitter like we're doing here. I mean, this is kind of like my first car. My brother's built several of these cars, but whenever we smash the glass out, it's just a huge mess. You end up, using a shop vac over and over on it. There is a trick that I learned, I don't know, on our third car that you can see my brother's kind of going around the edge of the glass there. Well, my suggestion is you smash a hole in the corner. Choose a corner, doesn't matter which. Get a Sawzall out, and with two people, you literally just cut it out in a rectangle, and you lift it out, and obviously wear gloves. It'll come out in one sheet because it's plastic coated, and really that's fast. Sawzall will do it real quick, and then you're like, okay, well, what's left over? Well, that the whole molding around the edge. I don't know what you want to call it. It's like a butane. I don't know. I'm sure somebody can correct me here in the comments, but basically you've got this sticky rubber gasket, right? Urethane, I think is what it is. Yeah, you can see him prying it up there. Well, if you use an air chisel and you cut it and then you start pulling on it, have one person lift it up and pull, and the other person get underneath it with an air chisel, it'll just come out like he's pulling it out there. I mean, it's really simple. You don't even have to, go to the extreme that we're going here by scraping it out. The air chisel get underneath that, and you can use it on every single window. It doesn't matter if it's a front window, back window. This method will work every single time. Even the little side windows, just using the air chisel. I would recommend you get some goggles. You don't want this. I mean, glass is nasty, but roll it up once you're done and dispose of it properly. But really, that's all there is to it. We're kind of going at it a little ham-fisted here, but I'm telling you, if you do what I'm telling you with the Sawzall, once you bust it in a corner, it'll literally be a minute's job instead of a super long task. But there's always glass. Unfortunately, you're always going to have to deal with the glass. Dirt track racing, we don't use windshields, so you also want that all nice and clean. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll weld our rebar to the frame of the cowling of the car, to the top of the car. Sometimes we'll weld it straight to the cage itself. It just really depends on the build. I prefer it on the outside of the car. And you can see here on the side windows, he's just kind of smashed it out. That typically happens in side windows. They're under a lot of pressure, which is really kind of weird, but yeah, once you pop one, they just completely explode. And again, same method, get an air chisel underneath that urethane, and it'll just come right on out. There are some plastic pieces that we tend to take out along the pillar there. The chosen cage for our Cavalier build is a mini stock cage. It just barely fits in a Cavalier. It also needs some modification. So in this video, we'll talk about the modifications we had to do to the mini stock cage to get it to fit into the Cavalier. It was a pretty close fit. I would recommend using one if you are considering building your own cage. If you're not confident in welding, then I suggest that you have somebody professionally build you a cage, because cage is probably the #1 safety device that you can install in a race car. Right here we're kind of dividing our labor. I was going to paint the car red, which I did for the season. That was kind of a mistake. So we're just dividing labor. I'm just roughing up what's left of the factory paint, get the clear coat off. My brother's currently cutting out the bolts for the seat, the factory seat, and they're just little threaded studs. He also cut out the gussets in the rocker panel area, was what I call it. It's a unibody car, so they have like these triangular gussets that run along the parallel along the side of the car, and he's just cutting those out. So we're doing that right now. He's working on his side. I think he hands the grinder over to me eventually, and I cut out my side. As we're working through this build, the one thing that you'll be aware of at all times is there's a lot of glue. So, Cavaliers are built with crimp welds, and lots of this glue is the only thing I can describe it as. And what we're doing is we're cutting away these gussets, smashing it down so it's flat, and essentially we're going to install some rectangular tubing. That'll be in another clip. We're just getting through the grinding off and prepping the interior of the car for the welding section. Currently my brother's doing some repair work here inside the car. I'm trying to run the welder. It's kind of a one-man job, unfortunately. So a little bit of standing around for me at this point. But he's repairing some things, put some plating in. We had a little weight reduction due to natural aging, i.e. rusted out. So he's doing some repairs here, trying to weld things back together, just so it's a little bit safer. Cutting down this rectangular tube steel to fit in the place where the rocker gussets were. You can see that they're cut out in the background. This is the basis or the platform for our mini stock cage, and it's a great way to stiffen the car up in a section that could be subject to damage due to side impact. So I highly recommend that you do this. We've found that on the 93 car this helped quite a bit. Alright, so the rocker has been reinforced with a piece of rectangular tubing, and that'll be our basis for our roll cage. And then the next step is to cut out the inside of this door panel so that we can run our door bars along the door skin. Alright, we've got the hoop in the back just kind of tacked in so we can measure these distances, because we're using a mini stock roll cage, one of the smallest roll cages we could find, but we're custom fitting it. Unfortunately, we made sure that we had the carpenter square 90 when it is welded to the rocker bar that we put in. So the problem that we ran into is that the Cavalier top is curved. It's not exactly a 90 degree. We did chop down this hoop to fit it underneath the top, you know, into the car. But the problem that we're running into is trying to get things to be square. We know that the hoop is, or the halo, we know the halo is pretty close to a 90 degree, so we're not too far off. The question that we really are running into is the angle of this front bar, and we know that it needs to be cut from the bottom so that we can match up to the halo. So we're gonna just chop off just little by little, keep test fitting it. Once we know that that distance is correct, we also have the bottom bar that is part of the roll cage down there to kind of guide us a little bit as well. But yeah, this is a custom fit. We're kind of concerned about the angles here. It really looks like when we start cutting from the bottom that it's going to be bent in somehow. Yeah, you just got a little bit of distance there. I don't know, but it is going to bow out. I don't know.
Well, they've got the bottom squared off, so
That tells you it should be a 90 there.
yeah. And the other car it's at a 90. It doesn't like angle in or anything to make it fit. So every little bit we take off, it gets closer to meeting up here.
I would say that we're going to lose at least 3 inches. So when you think about the cage, a mini stock cage, and you look at the geometry of it, it really is just a box. And the problem was that our box was too tall for the space that was being put into. And it ended up that, you know, through the process of just cutting off a little bit at a time, that the angles for that fish mouth and the halo matched up pretty much, you know, way it needed to in the end. So, you know, if you're assembling one of these, just take your time, cut a little bit at a time, and it will work out. What we're going to do now is we're going to cut 2 inches off the bottom of this front pipe, and we're going to just kind of test fit based on that. I'm pretty sure we're going to need more, but 2 inches seemed, it's right there, need power. 2 inches seemed appropriate as a starting point. Alright, so we've got the corner bar in on the driver's side, and the only way that we got to fit was to slowly chop ½ inch at a time. We knew we took about 6 inches off the passenger side, but we didn't know how many we're going to have to take off the driver's side, because it didn't seem to ever match up the door bar length, and this corner, the fish mouth, was an issue. So we squared this up with a carpenter square on the door sill frame as we were trying to pull it in. So basically, every time you took height off this bar, it started pulling it in towards the driver. And that allowed us to get these door bars within welding distance. So the problem that we face currently is once we get the door bars in, we still didn't get the front bar in on the cage, and we might end up having to modify that bar because I don't believe that this splay, this roll cage requires a splay, obviously, and I don't think we got the splay quite right on this because we're a couple inches off. So we'll have some fun customizing that one into place. But I think the door bars are going to go in just fine. We're going to stack them and weld them into place. We're just simply spot tacking everything. We'll go back in and do final welds and weld everything nicely as another step. Because we couldn't figure out the exact fitment. We just chose to put spot welds in so that if we had to, we could just nick them out and you know, recut. So that's what we're doing now. We're doing a door bar stack, and we'll come back in a moment and show you the results of that. And then we're gonna have to deal with this front bar. I don't know if we'll get to it tonight. It's getting kind of late, but it's one of those projects where you just kind of have to slowly cut things. Don't go. You know, the first thing we realized was we just lop off big parts of the bar. You don't put bar back, you can only take bar off. So it's just like in carpentry. So we're gonna get the door safe, get it all stacked up, and then we'll worry about this front. We can always get more. I mean, it's just a straight bar, so we can always get more stock of that. Whereas these bent pieces were super custom. I don't know what we would do to get more pieces. I'm sure somebody would make it, but at a cost. So that's where we're at. We're gonna do some more tack welding, and then we'll see how things measure up at the end. So what we did here is we actually pulled apart the passenger corner again. And it's a good thing we did. Things fit a lot better now that we've kind of re-engineered where we were putting things. Alright, well there we have it. Wasn't sure if the camera could take welding arc flashes, so I didn't really film it too much like that, but anyways, we do have the roll cage initially tack welded in. We're going to go back through and weld it properly, but you can see we got the Z-bar in, and it looks really nice. I like where it's positioned, but we really had to loosely assemble this to get it in right. And that would be the biggest tip that I could give you when fitting one of these roll cages. We used the carpenter square a lot just to make sure that things were 90 degrees, because it really is a box essentially that you're putting together. And the other thing that we discovered while we were doing this was just taking little bits off at a time to modify this mini stock frame to fit in this Cavalier was the key to getting this to fit. Especially this corner, or even that corner, but especially this corner, the driver's side, we really struggled to get this in correctly. But just taking, after we hit the 8-inch mark, just taking little half-inch chunks off the bottom, lowered the bottom of this bar and got it into position. So when you're doing something like this and you're modifying something from another essentially setup, going slow, checking all the measurements over and over again. We didn't just cut it. We measured over and over again to make sure that we were getting these angles right, that this actually is splayed. Like you would not think that this halo and these front bars would be splayed.
and just doing these little tack welds just to kind of hold it in place until we can go in and really weld it properly, I think really helps. So I don't know if you had anything, Brad, to contribute to that, but that's really what we did.
Yeah, we just took our time with it. And we didn't get frustrated. I mean, it's easy to get frustrated when you don't get things to match up right. But if you sit and you think about it and you try and work it out in your mind, you know, and test fit things over and over, it doesn't hurt to keep trying to fit it together without cutting anything, so you can kind of get a visual. Because some people are visual, some people like measuring. And I'm pretty visual, and that's what helped me out a lot, is having Sean hook up parts and pieces, and then we say, well, maybe just a ½ inch at a time, it'll start drawing it in, which it did. And the door bars started fitting right away as soon as we got down to about a ½ inch being away. And we really didn't have to fight it. And if you've got to fight it, then something's wrong. This kit has been made so many times on a jig, it's precision cut. And if you're off, it's because of something you did. And like Sean said, using a carpenter square helped out a lot, and tack welding it. Because what if you find out that something's just not right, and you've went ahead and welded something together? This does not come apart if you got to cut it up. It's not going to be the same.
We didn't adjust any of the fish mouths.
No.
They are all in their place, and the reason why they're in their place is because we took the time to just kind of ease things in and make sure that it, you know, is proper. And just doing these little tack welds is really the key to that.
We thought we were going to have to modify the front bar, but after working with it and making adjustments, then we found out, yeah, it's correct. Don't mess with this stuff.
Yeah.
You cannot cut the halo. You cannot cut this halo. It is designed as a part of the safety system. You don't want to, like, if it's too wide and it don't fit, well, you're going to have to make adjustments elsewhere. But you never cut the halo. You never cut your door bars. You don't cut the main hoop. You can take height off of it.
That's all we did. All we did to this kit was take height off.
So
that's absolutely it.
Yeah, we didn't do any other adjustments to it other than just height.
So we cut the bottom of these bars off down here in the corners.
Yeah.
And that's all we did.
I think if I measured out right with this plate down, or this rectangular tubing here rather, I think we had like 41 inches roughly, and this kit is 47 inches tall. So
it's a very tall kit.
Yeah. So it was designed for a Mustang, like a 70s to 80s Mustang, like a Fox body. And it'll fit in here. You just gotta chop it down to size.
Well, again, it's a box, right? And you just slice the bottom of the box off.
You can't slice the top. You can only slice
the bottom. Yeah. And I mean, if you had even a narrow car, which I doubt you would ever run into, I mean, you could drop a bottom bar out of the door bar, right? If you really had to.
But we don't want to, because we want to protect the driver. Because what if somebody comes up into you low and some part of their bumper comes off? Well, you don't want to be impaled. There's still another piece that we'll highlight probably tomorrow after we get this welded together, and it's a plate. It's 1/4 inch thick steel plate, and it goes on the outboard side of this cage over there on those door bars. And that absolutely keeps anything from coming through.